Have you ever heard of vanishing stars? Yeah, me neither. I mean, when I think of vanishing stars, I think of like, Sugar Ray, Hoobastank, Incubus, whatever happened to those guys? But that's not what we're talking about. We're actually talking about stars in the sky, y'all. Apparently, there were some, photographs or whatever taken of the night sky. Years later, they look and there's stars missing. Take the same pictures and there's stars missing. And basically, the idea is like, that's impossible, right? So that's what we're going to jump into today. There's a woman named Beatrice Villa Real, I think is how she goes. And according to her website, she has a master's in physics and a PhD in astronomy. And she sat down with Jesse Michaels to talk about this idea of vanishing stars, because her and her team uncovered some interesting peculiarities.
So how does looking at vanishing stars then lead you to an interest in UAP or UFOs?
So we were looking for these vanishing stars.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the people talk about vanishing stars sometimes in different ways than I talk about them. So we had access to these catalogs, like lots of imagery from 1950, and also a catalog called the U.S. Navy catalog. And then we had images of the sky as it looks today. And so we were comparing these images from the early 50s to images as it looks today. And I was hoping to see this perfect sparkling star that you can find in multiple images that one day vanishes. But before you find that, you find lots of candidates. And like things that you see in the 50s that have vanished, but you don't know if it's a beautiful star or if it's something else. I had this image where you could see multiple stars appearing and vanishing, which is completely crazy. Because one thing to have one transit, but when you have several of them happening in a small space at the same time, you really start wondering. So I started studying this phenomenon. I showed it to my colleagues, and we all started investigating it. We had this guy at Gran Telescopio Canaria, one of my friends, who actually pointed the world's largest optical telescope, a 10.4 meter telescope, to the positions of all these 9 objects, or 8 of them, or something like that. And there was nothing left.
So again, this idea is something new to me. I had never heard of this type of thing happening, and I have to admit, this is strange. Now, if my neighbor Jim came over and was like, Patrick, I've been studying the sky, there's stars missing. Okay, dude, have another, Pabst Blue Ribbon. But when someone of her stature and then, looks into it and sees something, I tend to listen. And then she informs her colleagues, right? So this idea that, they basically, again, had these images of stars and then looked back and realized, oh, wait, there's a bunch missing. Not just one, but she's saying 8 or 9, right? Sort of anomalies. But then, we also have to ask ourselves, is there prosaic reasons of something like this happening? Could this happen, right? What exists in the sky that, you capture one moment and years later, it's gone? It's something the size of a star, something that emits the kind of light that the star does, right? Now, you would also have to assume that the light, like the distance that light needs to travel, right, to get to you. So what you're seeing is in the past anyway, right? That light that's hitting is in the past regardless. So I don't know. I think I'm talking out of my element here. But anyway, let's get back to it.
We were really hoping to see some kind of counterpart there. And you said, oh, maybe there were 9 lasers or whatever. There was nothing like that. And then we started wondering, so what can actually cause this thing? And there's no astrophysical explanation. So we started looking at various kind of instrumental explanation, and all of them have.
And this is not a supernova or like,
Nothing.
The heat death of the sun type thing turns into a black hole or
Nothing
or
like
a
that.
dwarf or something.
You're not going to get several of them in a small space at the same time.
Wow.
So this just didn't match anything.
Just like perfect anomaly, basically. It's not explained by
although
any.
Today you can have that in the sky, because today you have lots of satellites that sometimes are blinking. You have lots of space garbage. And then short reflections just happen because you have solar reflections.
Sure.
the problem is that
We-
would have. This is from 1950.
We didn't have any of that technology back
Exactly.
then. Yeah.
So, and that's how I became interested.
I mean, that's an interesting point. So what she's saying is it couldn't be some sort of supernova or dying star because some of them are so close to each other, right? The ones that are missing. So that's impossible for it to be that. But I guess, again, I just have to ask, like, what are we implying that it is? Some sort of alien spaceship that turned off, like got captured but puts off light like a star? Like, what are we saying it is if it isn't a dying star, right? So I don't know. I find that interesting, what these things could be exactly.
And I got an idea of that. One of the ways how one can also search for more such examples by looking for those that are lying along a line or in a narrow band. So my friend Lars helped me to develop the statistics to properly see how many do we need, at least in a line, in order to, or in a narrow band, in order to say that even if you have this kind of transits, also their positioning is anomalous, that they are kind of not randomly placed, but they are aligned or so. And we had two such examples that are statistically significant. And one is 5 objects on a narrow band, and it's from the 27th of July, 1952. My colleague Enrique found these 3 stars, that triple transient. And this one is from the 19th of July, 1952. And it's super beautiful. And then my colleague Dave Altman, who is the media manager for Vasco, he said, "Do you know what happens or what happened on 19th of July 1952?" I said, "No, I wasn't around." So he introduced me to the Washington Flap.
Okay, now it's getting interesting. So basically, she's throwing out a date, right, in July of 1952, where the exact date that this photograph was taken of these stars, right, that they're no longer there. And in Washington, D.C., on that exact same date, we had a big, huge, UFO flap, as they're calling it, right, in Washington, D.C. That is true and very well known, in a very well-known case, right? UFOs over Washington, D.C., I believe they even jets or whatever, planes, military planes, pursued some of these, right? Like, this is a big deal. So this, I have to admit, is super fascinating.
That's absolutely amazing. I mean, because in UFO lore, not even lore, this was a national event. It was all over the press. It was in, newspapers saying saucers on the White House lawn. It prompted a call between Truman and Edward J. Ruppelt, who was the head of Blue Book at the time. And you had this Washington invasion or DC flyover where there were saucers all over DC at the time, and it was July of 1952, but it was specifically 2 weekends. It was the 19th and 20th, and it was the 26th and 27th. So I find that absolutely remarkable. So these are naval records that you're looking at to see the stars.
We used this Naval Observatory catalog initially, or I used them initially, but later we just went directly to the Mount Palomar images.
Got it. And so you're seeing images. You're seeing this 3 in a row and then 5 in a row in your case.
The 3 are just randomly placed, and the 5 are along a narrow band.
Okay, got it. And then they just seemed to vanish. They weren't in the publicly observable data like a year later or even a week later.
Exactly like you said.
That's wild. I mean, that's really fascinating.
Another data point here is that the way the lights are placed is in alignment of some sort, right? That's what she's sort of implying, and that's unusual, right? And then it's the ones that are aligned are the ones that vanish, right? But again, I want to hear what are the theories of what they think it could be, right? I mean, again, are we saying they're alien spaceships that were headed towards us and we captured them? But I would also say, okay, those lights went missing in 1952 on the same dates as the Washington, D.C., which I agree is remarkable. But I guess I would also ask, but those lights are so far away. So I don't know. But what is the connection? You know what I mean? There's a lot of interesting things, but how do they all connect?
Is there anything that is distinct about them when comparing them to other stars in the images, or do they look like garden variety stars?
They look like garden variety stars. We actually now are re-exploring whether they look identical to the garden variety stars, or if there might be some small, tiny difference, because you can expect slight differences if you have short flashes, depending on the shorter they are, the more they might be concentrated.
Interesting.
So.
And have you seen any vanishing stars since 1952? Have you combed through the records since then, or?
We have a lot of single transients, but what I actually want to do is to look at more cases of multiple transients. We have some more cases when we were looking for these alignments that we just ignored because we were looking for alignments.
I mean, this is fascinating, right? And it's like a whole new field to study, all these new data sets, all these new images to comb through and compare the night skies, right? And see if there's any anomalies like this, because I agree that is interesting. And her talking about the short flashes. So what, I guess, in my opinion, what I understood from that was that, do they look like typical stars, right? So let's separate it from that. And if they were just short flashes of light, they would be able to tell that based on its intensity, which is interesting. But yeah, and in that sense, you would be like, well, so they just happened to take a picture at the exact time that this occurred, right? Something that's interesting, what they could do, I'm sure they already thought of this because they're 1,000 times smarter than me. Okay, I'm an idiot. But what they could do is look for those same stars in other parts of the sky. Maybe they moved. How interesting would that be? To then, you know what I mean? And they found images where stuff is missing, right? Stars or lights, I should say, are missing. But have they found any pictures where there's more stars than there were before? Does that make sense? There's more lights. And maybe they can compare. Maybe some of these lights moved. Maybe there's adding lights, right? I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out, y'all. I'm just spitballing here. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. This idea of vanishing stars and what the good doctor here has uncovered is... it is fascinating. I agree. This is one of those things that's like, boom, real data right here we can look into, you know what I mean, of what it is. I would be interesting to hear her theory on what they could be, right? What are you saying those objects are that are no longer there, right? The light, is there something behind the light, something that created light? What do you think? And just theorize. That's okay. So anyway. All right, guys, I'll put a link in the description to the full interview with her on Jesse Michael's channel. It's a great interview. She's starting a new project that she's going to be going after. They got this like European crash retrieval initiative they're starting. Okay, very, very, very cool. So I highly recommend going to check out so you can see what she's up to apart from this as well. All right, y'all. We'll see you in the next one. Remember about us. Every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.